So I have been studying. I've been at the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. I did a Master of Public Administration, which is the course that I took up when I first resigned from Parliament, and I graduated in May of 2015. Okay. I taught a class called How to Build a Democracy, Lessons from Southern Africa. This election campaign, it began in earnest, I think, when primary season really kicked off, which was in summer last year, and that was the semester I began as a teaching fellow. Some of my fellow fellows were, for example, the former Chief of Staff for the Secretary of Defense, Candy Crowley, a chief anchor at CNN, and a number of people from both sides of the aisle who have been sort of instrumental in US politics. And so working with them gave me a whole lot of insights into the nature of US elections. The info I kept getting from them throughout the primary season was, don't worry, Trump is just a distraction, he won't last the summer. And then fall semester would begin. Oh, don't worry, he won't make it to Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving would roll around. Oh, by Christmas he'll be a goner. And then he won the primary. Basically, there is a group of Americans who, despite the gains of the Obama administration, and despite the recovery from the financial crisis in 2008, despite the fact that they're better off today than they were 50 years ago, even though they keep saying, let's make America great again, feel left behind for any number of reasons. Perhaps because being a white male in America doesn't carry the same status and currency as it used to. Potentially because globalization makes them feel diluted, in terms of culture, in terms of what it means to them to be American. But for a whole lot of other, interesting reasons, this quite powerful, quite well-to-do, quite self-sufficient and capable group of citizens, by any standards, by international standards certainly, has this real sense of having been left behind. And the same is true throughout the rich world. It's happening in Britain, it's happening throughout Europe. The problem with toying with protest politics, protest voting, sticking it to the man, is that sometimes you're like a dog that catches the bus, which is what happened in the UK. So there's a very real possibility that the same way that there were in the UK, markets, politics, government will be roiled by a possibility of a Trump election. It's sitting at about 30% chance that he could win. And so this attempt to kind of stick it to the man, through doing this, Americans could end up sticking it to themselves.
It seems bizarre to me from the outside that in a country as sophisticated as America seems, that these are the two best candidates that can come up in 300 million people. But the fact that you allude to this kind of unexpected political event happening around the world tells us that much of the world, the little guy, as you refer to it, I think is afraid. Mm-hmm. From an economic perspective, I'm concerned about the inward-looking, protectionist, isolationist type of attitude that's taking place from Brexit, Donald Trump, the rise of Donald Trump, Europe. It's not that long ago that we had almost a Nazi-type stance party, his leader being elected as president in Austria. So it does point to the fact that people are afraid. Mm-hmm. People are afraid of each other. People are afraid of other people coming into their countries. And perhaps we're moving back 60 or 70 years, where the world was 70 years ago, where somebody says, I'll protect you, I'll look after you, I'll make you great again. But actually, there's nothing to make great again. When he catches the bus, what's he going to do with it?
Yeah, that's the thing about politics that's a little bit dangerous. And I suppose I have a bit of a nerve saying this, but one of the things politicians do, and I now can see it from the outside, I can see how short-sighted it is politicians have a habit of inventing burning platforms, sometimes where they don't exist. So in order for Trump to make himself relevant, in order to create a demand for himself, there has to be a crisis. Yeah. But there is no economic crisis in the United States. The recovery has been strong. Millions of people who didn't have access to healthcare, 30-odd million Americans now have access to health insurance. Life is good for them. Yes, they feel a cultural assault. Yes, women are increasingly empowered, speaking out. Yes, multiculturalism and multi-ethnicity and religious diversity is one of the things that is happening in a modern and changing America, but that's the modern and changing world. Yeah. On every metric, Americans are better off today than they were yesterday. But politicians have a knack for finding that one weakness in all the strengths that'll make people paranoid, that'll divide people, and that will make people feel as though they are a threat to one another. A member of the Armed Services Committee when she was a senator, a well-traveled, highly experienced, and very influential First Lady, a woman who came up with the first draft of the Obamacare health policy. This is a serious politician who has operated in many different spheres, not just as a senator. So, yes, does she have faults? I think she has many. I think that, spending 25 years with Secret Service agents can make you imperious, perhaps, can make you seem as though you're disconnected from reality. But I don't think that's a fair moral judgment to make that she's a bad person just because she happens to be connected to the political elite. One of the things I was thinking about before I came here today was, would this election matter if Trump were not the candidate? Would people feel as disappointed in both the candidates if Trump was not the other? And we were all picturing a Bush-Clinton election, and Barbara Bush was saying, can we not find anyone who's not a Bush or a Clinton? It's ridiculous, kind of thing. That's how politics was going to look. And I think this is what triggered that populist sentiment of we're tired of elite politics. But had it been a Bush-Clinton campaign, I think it would have been a mundane election, no impact on the markets, everybody feeling calm about either candidate, and an opportunity for the candidates to canvass based on the issues. It's Trump, I think, that has turned this into a make or break election.
A week ago, I would have said Hillary is going to win hands down. I think Trump's campaign finally caught up with him with all the sexual misconduct allegations. Well, they seem like allegations, but they seem more than that. The email scandal rearing its head again, the timing was curious to me, and I think it's reignited a certain fear factor in the US. So I'm not sure who's going to win. I like Brexit. I think Hillary should win, but we could have a big surprise. I think Trump could actually nudge in front.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. If you forced me to ride, $500 on this question, I would say Clinton, because that's what the numbers are saying. She's got about 69% chance of winning. But I'm not in the business of betting on politics anymore, because every framework, every bit of understanding we think we have about political markets in the global north has been torn to shreds over the past 12 months. And so I think it's pretty reckless to make those kinds of predictions. Like you, I'm curious to know why the FBI, having put this email issue to bed, is now resurrecting it almost tangentially through Anthony Weiner's wife's emails, right, on his laptop. And to what extent is that a political agenda, not from the perspective of the FBI, but how did the information surface and get put in the FBI's lap, compelling them to investigate further. There's also issues around the Clinton Foundation. There's no clarity yet about whether or not the Clinton Foundation is going to be either prosecuted by the FBI or investigated for influencing, influence peddling to the extent that it is so close to the former Secretary of State. And so that's another dimension that's going to create uncertainty, I think, in the Clinton campaign in the run-up to this election. But again, if you forced my hand, I would definitely say Hillary Clinton will win. This really interesting thing happened end of September, first of the 3 election debates between Clinton and Trump. The debate was in the evening, usually a perfectly quiet time for the US markets at least, and Trump was sitting at 35% likelihood of winning the presidency. And over the course of the debate, that likelihood dropped to 30%, creating like a natural experiment. There was a concurrent rise in the value of the rand, of the Korean won, of the Mexican peso, and the S&P 500 gained like 2/3 to 3/4 of a percentage point. And so there's this sort of very natural experiment which, a lot of people have tried to upend. Is it correlation? Is it causality? I think it's clear that the markets, as usual, prefer stability, and stability comes in the form of a Clinton presidency. And those benefits, I think, flow through to emerging markets like ours. Except where things like gold are concerned, right? People are going to retreat to safe havens if a Trump presidency is on the cards. And your clients are going to have to think about doing similar, but emerging markets are going to struggle, especially the US's major trading partners. If you're going to build a wall with Mexico, this is one of the reasons that the peso strengthened on Trump's decline. If you're going to build a wall between the US and Mexico, that's not just going to have an impact on immigration, it's going to impact trade, it's going to impact economic flows. And so the same is true of Africa. It's true of most of the developing world, Latin America. And so, my sense is that the markets, however conservative they may be in outlook, however Republican dominated those sort of Wall Street pundits or people working in the banking sector may be, I think the markets would much, much prefer a Clinton presidency.
I agree with you. I would like to frame it slightly differently. I think you're going to have the short, medium, long-term kind of impact. We are coupled together with Latin America and certain Eastern European nations from an emerging market basket. And we have seen there's a strong correlation when one does badly, the others kind of follow. They tend to get traded as a basket of assets. Even if Trump wins, I can't see the wall ever being built, but it's all about sentiment. Sentiment influences everything. What I think Trump will do is succeed in isolating America from the rest of the world. And if there's one thing that the Great Depression taught us, is that when you turn protectionist and isolationist, that's never a good thing for global growth, global trade. And that's where I think in the medium to longer term we'll be affected. A Trump victory and perhaps right-wing victories in Europe, more countries leaving the European Union over time, I think that's bad for global growth and by definition bad for South Africa. So I think you will see an immediate knee-jerk. Emerging markets will weaken. Things will kind of settle down, and then Trump will actually have to be presidential. The American system is quite constraining for a president. He can say, even Obama couldn't close down Guantanamo. Clinton victory is more of the same, and markets don't like uncertainty, and therefore they like certainty.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I think with the caveat that I think you know and I know that US presidents don't have nearly as much economic sway as South African presidents do. So sometimes we do make the mistake of overestimating their influence on the markets. And the point you made earlier about it being temporary and then sort of moving into kind of much more stable territory is true of a possible recession. I think that the temperament of somebody like Hillary Clinton, who is a known coalition builder, a good negotiator, a woman of incredible stamina who's willing and able to travel to multiple markets, engage with leaders at the highest levels in order to get the job done. I think the way that she takes on politics in a kind of slowly but very sort of steady hand manner is precisely the kind of leadership you would need in a time of economic uncertainty. I think that Trump does not have that temperament. I believe that he is impulsive. And I agree with you about his temperament having the potential to do damage, not only to perceptions of the United States as an investment destination, but in terms of his ability to actually steer the ship. So certainly from a point of view of temperament, I think also Trump is not the right person to be, to the extent that heads of state in the United States have economic influence, it's over trade. Trade deals like the Trans-Pacific trade deal, AGOA here in South Africa and on the continent. You don't want somebody like Trump who is by nature insular, inwardly focused, has a real attitude about the movement of American jobs overseas and the movement of American money to other states. I don't think you want somebody like that in charge of trade negotiations, making decisions about how America is going to barter, deal, engage with other states. And so I think from that perspective, handling an economic downturn is not something that he would be best qualified to do.